A 7-year-old girl walks into a bakery holding only $5, pulling her 5-year-old brother, who excitedly points at a pink birthday cake. When she finds out the cake costs $45, she whispers through tears, "I'm sorry, we don't have money for the cake." Her little brother begins to cry uncontrollably, not understanding why he can't have his only birthday wish. Then, an elegant millionaire sitting quietly at a nearby table witnesses the whole scene. What he does next will change the lives of these 2 orphan children forever. The weight of $5 had never felt so immense in the hands of a 7-year-old girl. The bills, crumpled and damp with Lily's nervous sweat, represented more than simple cash. They were the sum of weeks of small chores, errands run for kind neighbors, and lucky coins found glinting on the hot asphalt. They were the only flicker of hope she possessed to make her little brother, Leo, realize his dream for his 5th birthday, which was the next day. Hand in hand, the two stopped in front of the window of the Gilded Crumb Bakery, an oasis of color and sugar amid the street's gray monotony. For Leo, with his wide, curious eyes, the place was pure magic. His small face was pressed against the cold glass, his warm breath fogging the surface as he pointed at every creation with a sigh of wonder. Lily felt her heart clench. She knew that world of delicate buttercream and ganache didn't belong to them. But today, just for today, she allowed herself to dream along with him. "Let's go in, Leo," she whispered, her voice firmer than she felt inside. The delicate chime of the door sounded, a soft announcement of their arrival, and the overwhelming aroma of vanilla and chocolate wrapped around them like a warm embrace. The place was even more impressive inside. Small tables with lace tablecloths, well-dressed patrons conversing in low tones, and, in the back, a baker in an immaculate white apron finishing a fruit tart. Lily felt small, displaced, like a wildflower trying to sprout in a perfectly cultivated garden. But then, Leo tugged harder on her hand. "Look, Lil, look!" he exclaimed, running on his tiptoes toward the main display case. His little fingers traced a path on the glass, moving past chocolate cakes with shining strawberries, lemon tarts with meringues that looked like clouds, and cupcakes in every imaginable color. Lily followed him, the knot in her stomach tightening with every step. Each one of those sweets seemed to scream a reality she was bravely trying to ignore, one of scarcity, of lack. She prayed the cake Leo chose would fall within her modest budget, a silent prayer amid the sugared paradise. And then he stopped, his eyes fixed on a single masterpiece in the center of the top shelf. It was a round cake, covered in light pink frosting, almost ethereal. Small sugar roses, a darker shade, spiraled up the sides, and edible silver pearls shimmered under the soft shop light. It was a fairy tale cake, a cake made for a princess or a prince. The desire on Leo's face was so pure, so absolute, that it broke Lily's heart into 1,000 pieces. He turned to her, his eyes shining with an intensity she'd never seen before. "Sissy," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. I want that one for my birthday." Lily swallowed hard, gathered all the courage she had, and approached the counter. The baker, a middle-aged man named Jonathan with a tired gaze, looked at her over his glasses. "Can I help you?" he asked, without much interest. "Mister, excuse me," Lily began, her voice a shaky thread. "How much is that cake over there, the pink one?" The man raised an eyebrow, following her gaze. He shrugged, as if the price were the most obvious thing in the world. $45. The phrase dropped onto Lily like a concrete slab. 45. She had 5. An abyss of $40 opened beneath her feet. The air seemed to thin, the sweet smell suddenly nauseating. She felt the blood drain from her face as the world spun slowly around her. The dream, which moments before seemed so palpable, crumbled into dust. Leo, still mesmerized by the cake, impatiently pulled the sleeve of her dress. "Can we take it, sissy? It's the only one I want. Please." The number 45 echoed in Lily's mind like thunder, drowning out the gentle, ambient music and distant conversations. For an instant, the world seemed to lose focus. The vibrant colors of the sweets became a blur, and the aroma of vanilla, once so welcoming, now felt suffocating. She gripped the 5 bills tightly in her hand, feeling the rough texture of the paper against her damp skin. They were so insufficient, so powerless before the shimmering pink dream in the display case. Her eyes moved from the cake to Leo's hopeful face, and that sight brought her back to reality. He didn't understand numbers, limits, or lack. To him, the world was still a place where wishes could materialize merely by wanting them strongly enough. How could she explain that magic had a price they couldn't afford? "Leo, honey," she started, her voice coming out weak and broken. "That cake is too big for just us two. How about one of those cupcakes over there? They have colorful sprinkles." She pointed to a row of decorated little cakes, each a miniature of joy and far more likely to fit her budget. But Leo didn't even look. His eyes were fixed, magnetized by the pink cake. He shook his head, a pout forming on his lips. "No, sissy, I only want the pink cake. It's my dream cake." The word dreams hit Lily with the force of a punch. She, at 7 years old, already understood that dreams were luxury items. Jonathan cleared his throat, impatient. "Well, girl, are you buying it or not? I'm busy." His voice was sharp, devoid of any sympathy. He looked at her as if she were an annoying insect, a smudge in the immaculate setting of his shop. At that moment, a well-heeled woman with a string of pearls and expensive perfume approached the counter. Without even glancing at the children, she ordered a large box of assorted macarons and a walnut tart, paying with a $100 bill and waving away the change with a dismissive gesture. "It's for a little celebration of my husband's fantastic quarterly results," she told the baker, who smiled subserviently. Lily watched the transaction with a tight heart. That woman spent in minutes more than Lily had seen in months, and for a trivial reason. The contrast was cruel, a painful lesson about the different realities coexisting in the same city. Jonathan turned his attention back to her, the mask of sympathy instantly vanishing. "Look, kid, either you buy something or you move. You're holding up customers who actually have money to spend." The humiliation burned on Lily's face. She felt the eyes of other customers on them, looks of curiosity that quickly turned into disapproval. She should leave, drag Leo away from that place and its impossible dream. But then she saw a solitary tear trace a path down her brother's cheek. That tear changed everything. Shame gave way to a fierce determination, a courage born of desperation. She could not fail him, not today. Raising her chin, she stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the baker. "Mister, wait," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "I don't have all the money right now, but I can work. I know how to clean. I can wash the floor, wipe the windows, anything. I'll work until I pay for the cake. Please." Her offer hung in the sugar-laden air, an act of pure faith against a mountain of indifference. Jonathan stared at her, his mouth twisting into a scornful smile, and Lily knew, with a cold dread, that her last hope was about to be crushed. The baker's scornful smile was crueler than any word. He let out a low laugh, a dry, unpleasant sound that cut through the sweet air of the shop. "Work?" he repeated, as if Lily had told the most absurd joke in the world. A child. "Listen here, girl, this is a serious business. A fine pastry shop, not a charity center. I don't need your work." He gestured disdainfully toward the immaculate shop. "Do you think I'd let someone like you touch anything in here? You'd only mess up the ambiance." The phrase, "someone like you," hit Lily with an invisible force, making her step back. It was a phrase she'd heard before, always spoken with the same tone of contempt, creating an invisible wall between her and the rest of the world. The woman with the pearls, still waiting for her box of macarons to be elegantly tied with a satin ribbon, turned and looked at Lily and Leo with obvious distaste. The nerve. she murmured to the baker. Loud enough for everyone to hear. Allowing street kids to come in and bother the clientele, it reflects poorly on the establishment's reputation. Another customer, a man in a suit reading a financial paper at one of the tables, lowered the pages and frowned. "He's right," the man said, his voice deep and authoritative. "If they can't afford to buy, they shouldn't be here. Simple as that. Call security and handle this." The air grew heavy with hostility. Lily felt dozens of eyes on her, judging her, condemning her for her crime of being poor and daring to dream. Her cheeks burned with shame, and she instinctively pulled Leo closer, trying to shield him with her small body from the cutting stares. But it was too late. Leo, who until then had only been focused on the cake, finally sensed the change in the atmosphere. He saw the harsh expression on the baker's face, heard the angry words of the other adults, and, worst of all, saw the distress on his sister's face. The confusion in his childish eyes gave way to fear. "Sissy, why are they mad?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Isn't the man giving me my cake?" The crying started low, a contained sob that quickly turned into a heart-wrenching wail. The tears he had been holding back now streamed freely down his face, tracing clean paths through a day's worth of playtime dirt. "I want the pink cake! It's my birthday! I want my cake!" His cries echoed through the quiet bakery, shattering the refined atmosphere. Jonathan flushed with anger. "That's enough! Get this noisy child out of here right now!" he ordered, pointing toward the door. "Or I'll remove you myself!" Lily's world collapsed. The humiliation, the stranger's anger, the frustration, nothing hurt as much as the sound of her brother's crying, a cry she had caused by giving him false hope. She knelt on the cold floor of the bakery, ignoring the looks of disapproval, and hugged Leo with all her might. She rocked him, feeling his small shoulders tremble against her chest. And then, with a broken heart, she whispered the most painful truth of all, the words she had fought so hard not to say. "I'm sorry, my love. I'm so sorry," she said, her own tears mixing with his. "We don't have the money for the cake." Lily's words, a tear-soaked whisper of defeat, seemed to seal their fate on that cold, polished floor. She hugged Leo tighter, closing her eyes, wishing she could disappear. His crying was a physical sound, a pain that vibrated through her, and every sob was an accusation of her inability to protect him from the harshness of the world. Jonathan, satisfied at having won the small battle, signaled to a taller, broad-shouldered man emerging from an office in the back. It was the manager, and his face held not the impatient irritation of the baker, but something far worse, a calculated coldness, the indifference of someone who deals with insignificant problems every day. "What's the trouble, Jonathan?" the manager asked, his voice low and controlled. "These two," the baker replied, pointing. "They're causing a scene and disturbing the clientele. They don't have money and won't leave." The manager didn't even look at Lily. His gaze swept the store, noting the customers who were watching the scene with discomfort. His priority was clear: restore order and the atmosphere of exclusivity. "Then, remove them," he said, with the same naturalness as someone asking to clear a table. "Call security if you need to." At a discreet table in the corner, Arthur Lancaster observed everything over the rim of his espresso cup. He had been there for 20 minutes, waiting for a business partner to discuss a new crypto investment, a transaction that could increase his already vast wealth by several $1 million. Initially, the scene at the counter was just background noise, the kind of small urban drama he had learned to ignore. He lived in a world of numbers, market strategies, of stocks rising and falling on the exchange. Poverty was an abstract concept, a statistic in a report he occasionally read, but something in that girl's voice, in her desperate offer to work, caught his attention. And the little boys crying, a sound of pure desolation over something as simple as a birthday cake, pierced the armor of indifference he had built around himself over the years. He looked at the gold watch on his wrist, an object worth more than those children would see in a lifetime. Suddenly, the metal felt heavy, cold, almost vulgar. A distant, dusty memory surfaced uninvited. The image of his own mother, years ago, splitting a single sweet roll between him and his sister, pretending not to be hungry so they could eat a little more. Something inside him, something he thought had been dormant forever, broke. The manager's coldness was the last straw. "Remove them." The phrase sounded monstrous to his ears. He saw the manager take a step toward Lily, who flinched, trying to make herself even smaller. It was at that exact moment that Arthur stood up. The movement was smooth, but charged with an innate authority that made everyone in the bakery turn toward him. The expensive suit, the erect posture, the penetrating gaze, everything about him exuded power. The manager stopped, taken by surprise. Arthur walked slowly to the counter, his gaze passing over the manager and fixing on the baker, who now looked suddenly nervous. "That won't be necessary," Arthur said, his voice calm, but with a timbre of steel that brooked no argument. He pulled his wallet from the inside pocket of his jacket, a simple gesture that silenced the entire shop. Ignoring the wide-eyed stares, he turned slightly and his gaze met Lily's, who was staring up at him from the floor, her eyes red and swollen from crying. "I'll take the cake," he told the baker, without taking his eyes off the girl, "the pink one, and please wrap it for presentation." A heavy silence fell over the gilded crumb. Leo's crying subsided to muffled sobs against Lily's shoulder as she looked up at the elegant man, unable to understand. Her small, overwhelmed mind couldn't process the sudden shift in the room's dynamic. A second ago, she was an intruder about to be expelled. Now, she was the center of attention for a man who seemed to have stepped out of a movie. The baker, caught off guard, stammered, "The pink cake, sir." "Yes," Arthur replied, his voice firm. "That's what I said. Wrap it nicely. The best bow you have." He pulled a $100 bill from his wallet and placed it on the marble counter. The sound of the bill hitting the cold surface was the only noise in the tense silence. "Keep the change." The manager, previously so sure of himself, now rushed to attend to the important customer, pushing the baker aside. "Immediately, sir. I apologize for any inconvenience." He shot a scathing look at Lily, as if blaming her for the embarrassing situation. Arthur ignored him completely. His eyes remained fixed on the kneeling girl. He took a few slow steps toward her and crouched down. A surprising movement for someone on such pristine ground. Now they were on the same level, eye to eye. Up close, he could see the dust on her cheeks, the faded patch on the knee of her dress, and, above all, the mixture of fear, confusion, and a spark of defiant pride in her eyes. "I think this cake belongs to someone having a birthday," he said softly, his voice stripped of its former harshness. Leo raised his head, his face streaked with tears and dirt. His eyes widened when he saw the man so close, and he hid a little further behind Lily. Lily, for her part, couldn't speak. She just nodded, an almost imperceptible movement. She didn't trust strangers, especially rich men. Life had already taught her that kindness often came with a hidden price. "It's his birthday," she finally managed to whisper, her voice hoarse. "He'll be 5 tomorrow. 5 is a very important age," Arthur said, a slight smile touching his lips. "It deserves the most special cake of all, and I think he chose very well." He glanced at the pink cake, which was now being carefully placed in a white box with the shop's gold logo. "My name is Arthur, and yours?" Lily hesitated. Revealing their names felt too intimate, too dangerous, but the kindness in the man's eyes seemed genuine. "I'm Lily, and he's Leo. It's a pleasure to meet you, Lily and Leo." The manager approached with the cake box, holding it as if it were a rare jewel. "Here you are, sir, as requested." Arthur stood up and took the box. Instead of handing it to Lily, he turned to Leo. "Happy birthday, champ," he said, extending the box to the boy. Leo looked from the box to Arthur's face, then to his sister, seeking permission. Lily, still stunned, gave a small nod. Slowly, as if afraid it was all a dream, Leo extended his little arms and took the box. It was large and a little heavy for him, but he hugged it to his chest with surprising force, his face lighting up with a smile so radiant it seemed to fill the entire place. The pure joy on his face was something Arthur hadn't seen in a long time. Genuine happiness, neither bought nor negotiated, but simply felt. That smile was worth more than any profit in his financial investments. He felt a pang of something that wasn't business or strategy, something purely human. Lily stood up, wiping stubborn tears with the back of her hand. "Thank you, mister," she said, gratitude fighting against distrust. "I don't know how to pay you back." "There's nothing to pay back," Arthur replied. "Consider it a gift." He was preparing to leave, his good deed for the day concluded, when a simple question stopped him. "Where are your parents?" he asked casually. Lily's smile wavered and vanished. A dark shadow passed over her eyes, a sadness too deep for a 7-year-old. She looked at the floor and replied in a quiet, almost inaudible voice, "They aren't here anymore." Lily's answer, "They aren't here anymore," hung in the air with unexpected weight. It wasn't what she said, but how she said it. The low voice, the absence of tears, the weary acceptance of an old pain. Arthur, a man accustomed to deciphering the subtext in multi-million-dollar negotiations, realized those words hid an abyss. He had expected an answer like, "They're at work" or "They're at home." The finality in her voice caught him off guard. He looked from Lily to Leo, who was now examining the golden ribbon on the cake box with childish fascination, oblivious to the seriousness of the moment. The image of the two of them, so small and alone in that world of indifferent adults, struck him forcefully. His intention had been simple: buy a cake, alleviate a small injustice, and move on with his day, with his meeting about the cash flow of a new venture. But now, something prevented him from simply turning his back and walking away. "Aren't here anymore," he repeated gently, trying to understand. "What does that mean, Lily?" Lily raised her eyes from the floor. There was a hesitation in them, a barrier she instinctively raised to protect herself and her brother. "They went on a trip," she said, using the story she told Leo, the gentle lie that protected his innocence, to a place very, very far away. "It's been a long time." Arthur felt a knot form in his throat. The trip was obviously a euphemism. He didn't press her, not directly. Instead, he changed tactics. "I see. And who are you living with now? Grandma, maybe, an uncle?" With each question, the barrier in Lily's eyes seemed to get higher. She shook her head. "It's just us two." The simplicity of that statement was devastating. Arthur looked around. The bakery had returned to its normal rhythm. The customers who had previously looked at them with disdain now looked at him with respectful curiosity, the millionaire making a gesture of charity. The manager smiled subserviently, ready to attend to any other whim. No one seemed to care that two children were, apparently, alone in the world. The superficiality of it all sickened him. He realized the problem wasn't just a $45 cake. The problem was much larger, deeper, and darker. "Where do you live, Lily?" he asked, his voice even softer, trying not to frighten her. "Is it close by?" Lily squeezed her free hand, the protective instinct screaming inside her. Giving her address to a stranger was one of the first things she had learned never to do. But this man, he had bought Leo the cake. He had crouched down to talk to them. He didn't seem to want to hurt them. "It's not far," she replied, evasively. The indecision on her face was clear. Arthur realized he was reaching a limit. Pressing further might scare her and make her flee. He needed time. He needed a way to earn her trust. "All right," he said, backing off slightly, "but that box is heavy for Leo. And you have $5, right?" He glanced at her hand, where the bills were still tightly grasped. "How about we use that money to grab a taxi? I'll ride with you to the door, just to make sure you get there safely with the cake." The offer was logical, almost paternal. For Lily, who always walked miles to save every penny, the idea of riding in a taxi was an unimaginable luxury. The temptation to accept to have help carrying the cake and get home without exhaustion was immense, but distrust still fought within her. Before she could answer, Arthur's phone rang, a discreet and expensive tone. He looked at the caller ID. It was Isabel, his fiancée. At the same time, his partner, Mark, the man he was supposed to meet, entered the bakery. Looking around impatiently, Arthur Lancaster's life, with its commitments and expectations, was calling him back. He felt split, pulled between two worlds, his of wealth and obligations, and theirs of abandonment and survival. He knew he needed to make a decision, and fast. Ignore the call of his world and dive into theirs, or retreat and let destiny take its course. He looked at Lily, awaiting her reply, and saw the hesitation transform into a silent decision. She took a step back, pulling Leo along. "No need, mister, we can carry it. Thank you again." With that, she turned and, holding Leo's hand tightly, began walking toward the door, ready to vanish back into the street, taking the pink cake and all their secrets with them. The buzzing of the phone in Arthur Lancaster's hand seemed to come from another universe. Isabel's name flashed on the screen, a demand for attention from the world she belonged to, a world of gala dinners, discussions about fund profitability, and managing a fortune that spanned continents. Across the bakery, his partner, Mark, watched him with a look of increasing irritation, tapping his fingers on a leather briefcase that certainly contained business proposals worth millions. For a paralyzing second, Arthur was suspended between these two realities. He could answer the phone, apologize to Mark, close the deal, and forget the two children as a brief, odd detour in his perfectly scheduled day. It would be the logical, sensible thing to do, but in seeing Lily's small, straight back moving away, carrying the invisible burden of a lifetime on her 7-year-old shoulders, he felt that logic had no place here. Lily pushed the heavy glass door, holding it open for Leo to pass. The boy, his face still streaked with dried tears but now radiant, hugged the cake box as if it were the greatest treasure in the world. They stepped out of the climate-controlled sanctuary of the bakery and were swallowed by the chaos of the city sidewalk, the noise of traffic, the hurried flow of people, the hot, polluted air. Arthur took a step toward the door, ignoring Mark's call. And that's when it all happened, in one cruel and inevitable fraction of a second. A hurried man, talking on his cell phone, bumped into Leo without even noticing. The impact was light, but enough to unbalance the boy, who was already struggling to hold the large box. The white box tilted dangerously in his arms. Leo let out a small yelp of panic, trying to recover it, but his fingers were too small. The box slipped and fell. There was no loud crash, just a dull, hollow thud against the grey concrete of the sidewalk, a sound of silent disaster. For an instant, no one moved. The box lay there, sideways, one flap opening to reveal a smear of crushed pink frosting against the cardboard. Lily froze, her entire body rigid, her eyes fixed on the fallen box, and all the color drained from her face. That thud wasn't just the fall of a cake, it was the sound of her hope, one with so much humiliation, being pulverized on the dirty ground. Leo looked at the box, then at his empty hand, and his face crumbled. The scream that tore from his throat was no longer one of tantrum or frustration, as it had been inside the shop. It was a lament of pure, absolute, uncontrollable pain, a sound that seemed to rip through the air and silence all the street noise. It was this sound that finally propelled Arthur into action. Hesitation evaporated, replaced by a cutting clarity. He burst through the door like a flash, completely ignoring his partner who was now calling his name. He didn't stop to look at the man who had bumped into Leo, who had already vanished into the crowd. His focus was entirely on the two helpless figures on the sidewalk. He knelt down on the rough concrete. the expensive fabric of his trousers getting soiled without him caring. The cake was ruined, a shapeless mass of pink and white, but Arthur barely glanced at it. He looked at Lily, who stood paralyzed, catatonic, tears silently streaming down her face, as if she no longer had the strength to sob. Her gaze was empty, defeated. In that moment, he understood that buying another cake wouldn't solve anything. The problem was the hard ground, the indifferent crowd, the fragility of their joy. He needed to fix the world that allowed a child's happiness to be so easily crushed. He leaned closer and, with a voice full of a conviction he didn't know he possessed, spoke directly to the girl with the empty eyes. "This won't happen again," he said, his voice low but resonating with promise. "Not while I'm here. You're coming with me now." Arthur's words cut through the fog of despair surrounding Lily. "You're coming with me now." It wasn't a question, but a statement of fact, spoken with a calm authority that left no room for argument. Lily slowly raised her head, her eyes meeting his. There was something different in the man's gaze now. The polished kindness from before had transformed into an unwavering, almost fierce determination. Leo continued to cry, a heartbroken sound that drew curious glances from passing pedestrians. Arthur ignored them. He reached out, not for Lily, but for the ruined cake box on the ground. Carefully, he picked it up and held it upright, even knowing it was useless. It was a gesture of respect for the dream it represented. "The cake might be messed up," he said, looking at Leo, "but the birthday is still happening, and it will be the best one yet. I promise." The word promise hung between them. Lily was used to broken promises, to hopes that dissolved like smoke. But there was a solidity in that man's voice, a weight of certainty that intrigued and frightened her at the same time. Mark, his partner, finally caught up to them, his face red with frustration. "Arthur, what the hell are you doing? We have a meeting. We're talking about an investment that could generate significant returns for our capital." Arthur stood up, facing Mark. For the first time in years, the words return and capital sounded hollow, almost insignificant. "The meeting can wait," he said, his voice cold. "Cancel my appointments for the rest of the day." "Cancel? Are you crazy? What about your fiancée? She's calling non-stop." "Tell her I had a family emergency." "Family emergency," Mark repeated, incredulously, looking with disdain at the two dirty children on the sidewalk. "Are they your family now?" Arthur didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out his cell phone, dialed a number, and brought the device to his ear. "Carlos, I need you, in front of the Gilded Crumb on Central Avenue, now." He hung up and turned back to Lily. "My driver is coming to pick us up. We'll wait over there." He pointed to a nearby park bench. Lily didn't move. Her brain worked furiously, weighing the fear of the unknown against the desperation of her situation. Going with that man was an immense risk, but what awaited her if she didn't? Returning to the small back room of an abandoned building with a smashed cake and her brother's broken heart, that image gave her the answer. With a deep breath, she took Leo's hand, who was still quietly sobbing. "Come on, Leo, let's sit down for a bit." She guided him to the bench, a silent decision to trust, at least for now. Mark watched the scene, dumbfounded. "This is unbelievable, Arthur. You're throwing away a deal because of runaways. Do you know what your family will say? What your father would say about risking the fortune he built for a whim?" His father's name hit a nerve. Arthur turned to Mark, his gaze hardened. "My father taught me to recognize a good investment, and right now, I can't think of a better investment than this." He gestured subtly toward the children. Before Mark could retort, a luxurious black sedan pulled silently up to the curb. A man in a uniform stepped out and opened the rear door. It was Carlos, Arthur's driver and trusted man for over a decade. Arthur guided Lily and Leo to the car. The children stopped, marveling at the soft leather interior and the smell of a new car. They had never been in anything so grand. "Get in," Arthur said, with an encouraging smile. Lily hesitated for one final second, then helped Leo climb in. As she entered, Arthur handed the damaged cake box to Carlos. "Take this, please." Then he got in and closed the door, the muffled sound sealing the noisy world of the street outside. Inside, it was silent and calm. Leo stopped crying, distracted by the novelty. He ran his little fingers over the smooth leather of the seat, his eyes wide. Arthur watched the two of them, a strange, protective feeling growing in his chest. He didn't know exactly what he was doing or where this decision would lead him. He only knew that. For the first time in a long time, he was doing something that truly mattered. He picked up the intercom. "Carlos, take us home." The drive to Arthur's house was a plunge into a parallel universe. For Lily and Leo, accustomed to noisy streets and crowded buses, the silent, luxurious interior of the car was like a spaceship. Leo, now fully recovered from his crying, pressed his face against the tinted glass, watching the city blur by in colors and lights, as if he were watching a movie. Lily, however, remained tense, perched on the edge of the soft seat, her small hands clenched into fists in her lap. She watched Arthur sideways, trying to decipher the man beside her. He didn't ask questions, didn't try to force a conversation. He just looked out the window, lost in his own thoughts, giving her the space she needed. The car left the bustling neighborhoods behind and entered an area of tree-lined streets and imposing mansions, hidden behind high stone walls and wrought iron gates. Finally, the vehicle slowed and stopped before a monumental gate that silently opened to receive them. They drove along a path of white gravel, flanked by a garden so perfectly manicured it seemed unreal. The house, or rather, the mansion, appeared before them, a modern structure of glass and steel, with clean lines and an infinity pool that seemed to merge with the blue sky. Carlos stopped the car under an elegant portico. A middle-aged woman, in an immaculate grey uniform and with a gentle smile, was already waiting for them at the door. "Mr. Lancaster, welcome. Your fiancée has called several times. She seems quite concerned." "Thank you, Helen. Tell her I'll return the call later. Please prepare the second-floor guest suite, the one with 2 pull-out beds. And ask the kitchen to prepare something for the children to eat. Something simple, sandwiches, perhaps, and a glass of milk." Helen looked at Lily and Leo with surprise, but her professional expression didn't waver. "Immediately, sir." Arthur got out of the car and opened the door for the children. "Come on, guys. Welcome to my house." Lily and Leo emerged hesitantly, their eyes wide with astonishment at the magnitude of the place. The entrance hall was vast, with a double-height ceiling and a floating staircase leading upstairs. An entire wall was glass, offering a panoramic view of the city in the distance. Everything was white, grey, and gleaming, so clean that Lily felt acutely conscious of the dust on her old shoes. Arthur guided them through the living room, a huge space with white sofas, a plush rug, and abstract artwork on the walls. He seemed oblivious to how out of place they felt there. "Helen will show you to your room. You can take a shower if you'd like, and after, we'll solve the cake problem." He crouched down in front of Leo, who was looking at everything with his mouth slightly open. "We're still going to have a birthday party, champ. We just need a new plan." While Helen led them upstairs, Arthur went to his office, a room with glass walls overlooking the garden. He sat in his leather chair and looked out at the horizon. The silence of the house was deep, but his mind was a whirlwind. He picked up the phone to call Isabel and explain, but stopped. What would he say? That he abandoned a deal and ignored her because he found 2 street children? She, with her constant concern for appearances and the family's social standing, would never understand. His family, in fact, would be a problem. His father, before passing away, had transformed a small business into an empire, and now his mother and siblings viewed the preservation of the fortune and reputation as their most sacred mission. Helping people of that sort was seen as a weakness, an unnecessary exposure that could stain the Lancaster name. They would press him to get rid of the children as quickly as possible, perhaps with a generous check to some institution, cleansing his conscience and the family's image. The idea filled him with sudden disgust. He was tired of living up to their expectations, of measuring every action by its impact on business or the stock market. A soft noise drew him out of his thoughts. Lily stood in the doorway of his office, now wearing a white bathrobe that was too big for her. Her wet hair stuck to her forehead. She looked even smaller and more vulnerable in the immense environment. "Mr." she began, her voice shy. "Helen gave us clothes to wear after our shower. And Leo is eating a sandwich. He says it's the best sandwich in the world." "I'm glad to hear that," Arthur said with a smile. "But Leo is worried about the cake. He thinks he won't have a birthday anymore." Arthur looked at her, seeing the responsibility in her small eyes. She wasn't there to ask for anything for herself, but to intercede for her brother. "Lily, come here." He motioned to the chair across from his desk. Hesitantly, she approached and sat on the edge. "Tomorrow is Leo's big day, and we are going to throw him a party, but I need your help. You're the only one who knows what he really likes, besides the pink cake." For the first time since they met, Lily smiled. A small, shy, but genuine smile. The idea of being part of the plan, of having an active role in her brother's happiness, seemed to dissolve some of her distrust. "He likes superheroes," she said, her voice brightening a little. "His favorite is Captain Courage." Arthur picked up a pen and a notepad. "Captain Courage," noted. "What else?" And for the first time, in that office where multi-million-dollar decisions were made, the conversation was about the most important things in the world: superheroes, blue balloons, and the search for a new, perfect birthday cake. But while they planned, neither of them knew that. Miles away, the bakery manager, irritated by the public humiliation, was making a call to child services, describing 2 abandoned and neglected children who were causing trouble in his establishment. The next day dawned with a golden light that flooded the guest room, making Leo's eyes open with contagious excitement. "It's today, Lily! It's today! It's my birthday!" he shouted, jumping on the soft pull-out bed, a luxury he never imagined existed. Lily, who had slept little, her mind reeling with the reality of their situation, smiled at her brother's pure joy. For one morning, in that spacious, silent room, she allowed herself to forget the hard streets and the constant uncertainty. Arthur had been awake for hours. Planning Leo's birthday party became his sole focus, a mission he embraced with the same intensity he dedicated to his businesses. He ignored the dozens of missed messages and calls from his fiancée and partners. Instead of analyzing stock market charts, he was researching online the best places to buy Captain Courage balloons and decorations. When Lily and Leo came downstairs, they found the dining room table, normally used for formal business dinners, covered with a vibrant blue cloth. There were pancakes with syrup, fresh fruit cut into star shapes, and a small cupcake with a single lit candle in the center. Leo's eyes shone as if he were looking at the greatest fortune. "A birthday breakfast?" he exclaimed, marveling. Arthur smiled. "Every birthday boy deserves a special breakfast." While Leo eagerly attacked the pancakes, Arthur turned back to Lily. "The new cake will arrive this afternoon, but first we have a mission. We need to find a Captain Courage costume for the birthday boy." The idea of going to a toy store left Leo ecstatic. The morning passed like a dream. Arthur took them to a huge store, a paradise of colorful aisles and shelves filled with every imaginable toy. For the first time, Lily saw Leo run freely, without worrying about asking prices or being scolded. Arthur said he could choose whatever he wanted. Leo, overwhelmed by so many options, ended up choosing a full Captain Courage costume and an articulated action figure of the hero. Lily, for her part, didn't ask for anything, content to merely observe her brother's happiness. Arthur, noticing this, guided her to a book section and encouraged her to choose one. She picked a hardcover book with beautiful illustrations about stars and planets, something that had always fascinated her. While they were at the store, Arthur's cell phone rang. It was Helen, the housekeeper. Her voice was strained. "Mr. Lancaster, I apologize for interrupting you, but there are two people here. They say they are from Child Services. They're asking about the children." Arthur's blood ran cold. The reality, which he had managed to keep at a distance for a few hours, returned with full force. He knew this was a possibility, but he hadn't expected it so soon. The bakery manager, probably. The anonymous complaint was the weapon of cowards. "Calm down, Helen. Don't let them into the house yet. Tell them I'm on my way and that they must wait for me outside the gate. And under no circumstances, let them see the children." He turned to Lily and Leo, forcing a smile to keep them from getting alarmed. "Change of plans, guys. The party's going to start a little early at home." On the way back, the atmosphere in the car was different. Arthur was visibly tense, making quick calls and speaking in a low voice with his lawyer. Lily, with her street-honed sensitivity, noticed the change. Fear, an old acquaintance, began to seep into her newfound joy. When they arrived, Arthur instructed Carlos to take them through the service entrance at the back of the mansion. "Helen will take you to the basement media room," he told Lily, crouching down to her level. "It's a fun place, with a huge screen. Stay there and play with Leo. Don't come out until I come get you, okay? It's very important." The serious tone in his voice left no room for doubt. Lily nodded, her heart pounding. She took Leo's hand and followed Helen through corridors she didn't know, descending a staircase to a part of the house that felt like a luxury bunker. The door closed behind them, leaving them in a world of velvet armchairs and dim lights. Outside, Arthur walked to the main gate. Two social workers, a severe-looking woman named Ms. Albright and a younger man, were waiting for him. "Mr. Lancaster, I'm Ms. Albright, from the Department of Children and Families. We received a complaint about two unaccompanied children who are allegedly under your care." "They are not unaccompanied. They are with me," Arthur replied, his voice controlled. "I'm afraid it's not that simple. There is no record of custody or kinship. We need to see the children and verify their living conditions. Where are they?" "They are my guests, and they will not be questioned without my attorney present." Miss Albright raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Lancaster, the law is clear. If you are harboring minors without documentation and without notifying authorities, you may be committing a crime. We need their full names and birth certificates to start." And there was the insurmountable obstacle. Arthur knew from his brief conversation with Lily that they probably had none of that. They were ghosts, invisible to the system. "They don't have those documents," he admitted. Ms. Albright's expression hardened. "In that case, the situation is even more serious. We will have to take them to a shelter until we can identify them and find any relatives. It is standard procedure." The word shelter sounded like a sentence. Arthur thought of Lily and Leo being taken to an unknown place, separated perhaps, lost in an impersonal and bureaucratic system. The image was unbearable. "That won't happen," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "They stay here." Ms. Albright looked at him with a mixture of pity and irritation. "Sir, your fortune does not place you above the law. If you don't cooperate, I will be forced to return with a court order and police support." The threat of a court order hung in the air, cold and inflexible like the iron gates that separated them. Arthur Lancaster, a man accustomed to bending the world to his will with checks and phone calls, found himself facing a force his money couldn't directly control: state bureaucracy. He knew Miss Albright was right. Legally, he had no claim over those children. His fortune, which could buy companies and influence markets, was useless against the lack of a simple birth certificate. "I understand the procedure," Arthur said, changing tactics, his mind working at high speed to find a way out. And I want to cooperate, but you can't simply snatch them away. They've been through too much already. The boy just turned 5. Our priority is the children's welfare, Mr. Lancaster, Mrs. Albright retorted, impassive. And their welfare, by law, is to be within the system, where we can ensure their safety and look for a permanent solution. A shelter is the first step. Give me some time, Arthur pleaded, his voice losing its command edge and gaining a tone of supplication that surprised him. 24 hours. My lawyer is already working on this. We will try to locate any documents, any relative. Tearing them out of here now will only traumatize them further. The social worker studied him for a long moment. Perhaps she saw the desperate sincerity in his eyes, or maybe the mention of lawyers made her hesitate. 24 hours, she conceded, reluctantly. We will be back tomorrow, at noon, and we expect to have full and unrestricted access to the children. If not, the situation will become much more complicated for you. With that, they turned and left, leaving Arthur alone with an impossible deadline. He went back inside, the weight of the world on his shoulders. In the basement media room, Lily tried to distract Leo, but her own heart was racing with fear. She had heard raised voices outside before Helen locked them down there. She knew something was wrong. Leo, dressed in his Captain Courage costume, was more interested in exploring the buttons on the reclining chairs. Lily, look, the chair moves all by itself. Lily forced a smile, but her eyes remained fixed on the door, waiting, dreading what would come next. When Arthur finally appeared, he tried to seem calm, but she saw the tension in his face. Guess what? The baker called. Captain Courage's birthday cake is ready, he announced, trying to inject false cheer into his voice. We're going to have the party down here. It will be our secret superhero hideout. The idea of a secret hideout excited Leo, and for a few hours they managed to create a bubble of artificial happiness. Helen brought the cake, an incredible blue and red creation with the hero's shield, along with sandwiches and juice. They sang Happy Birthday, and Leo blew out the 5 candles with an ear-to-ear grin. For a brief moment, seeing Leo's genuine joy, Arthur almost forgot the sword hanging over their heads. But when the small party ended and Leo, exhausted from excitement, fell asleep in one of the armchairs, reality returned. Arthur sat beside Lily in the silence of the dark room, with the cinema screen off. Lily, he began softly, those people were from child services. They think you should go to a place called a shelter. Lily stiffened. She had heard stories about shelters. Places where the children were many, the caregivers few, and siblings often separated. The idea terrified her. No, she whispered, her voice trembling. They can't take us. I take care of Leo. I always have. I know you do, Arthur said, his voice full of compassion. You are the bravest sister I've ever met. But they have rules, laws, and without documents, without a family name, they say we have no choice. He watched her, seeing the panic grow in her eyes, and in an act of desperation and trust, Lily decided to reveal the secret she guarded so carefully. We have a place, she said, her voice so low he could barely hear. It's our hideout. Before they went on their trip, our mother showed us. She said if something happened, if we got scared, we should go there. No one would ever find us. Arthur leaned closer. What place, Lily? Where is it? She hesitated. The loyalty to the promise made to her mother, fighting against the imminent fear of separation. But fear won. It's an old theater. The grand, majestic theater, downtown. It's been abandoned for years. We get in through a window in the back. Suddenly, a terrible and desperate idea began to form in Lily's mind. The shelter meant separation. That man, Arthur, was trying to help, but the law was stronger than him. There was only one way to keep her promise never to leave Leo. She needed to disappear, while Arthur, armed with this new information, began to trace a desperate legal plan with his lawyer on the phone. Lily made her own decision. Later that night, when the house was silent and dark, and Arthur, exhausted, finally fell asleep in his office over a pile of papers, Lily got up. She gently woke Leo. "Come on, little brother. We have to go on a night adventure." Taking only their old coats and the Captain Courage action figure and leaving behind the books, clean clothes, and the safety of that house, Lily silently opened a window in the ground floor kitchen. Hand in hand, the two siblings slipped into the darkness of the garden and, like two small ghosts, vanished into the night. Arthur woke with a stiff neck and the cold light of dawn invading his office. He had fallen asleep over the legal codes and strategies his lawyer had emailed him, a battle of paperwork against an impersonal system. For a moment, the silent house comforted him, but then a cold premonition ran through him, a sharp intuition he usually reserved for high-stakes business. Something was wrong. He raced up the stairs, his heart pounding against his ribs. The guest suite was empty. The beds were made. The clothes Helen had given them were folded on an armchair. The Captain Courage costume, however, was gone, as was the book about stars Lily had chosen. A cold, liquid panic seized him, a fear more visceral than any loss on the stock market. He ran through the house, calling their names in urgent whispers, the sound echoing in the empty corridors. Helen appeared, sleepy and alarmed. "What is it, sir?" "They're gone," Arthur said, his voice tight. "You check all the doors and windows." It was Helen who found the kitchen window ajar, a small passage to the darkness outside. The truth hit him like a punch to the gut. Lily had run away. She had heard him talk about the shelter, about the laws, and in her childish desperation, she had chosen the only solution she knew: to disappear, to protect her brother the only way she knew how, by becoming invisible. Guilt crushed him. He had scared her. He, with all his wealth and power, hadn't managed to offer her the only thing she needed: security. In that moment, a choice crystallized in his mind, as clear and sharp as a shard of glass. His phone was vibrating incessantly on the desk. It was Isabel, his mother, his partners, his whole world demanding his attention, his presence, his conformity. They would warn him to let go, to hand the problem over to the system, to protect himself and the family name. Rushing to a meeting about dividends and interest on a new investment fund would be the easy way out. But looking at the open window, at the dark night that had swallowed the two children, he knew he couldn't turn back. Those paternal feelings, which had surfaced so unexpectedly, were now the only thing that mattered. The choice was no longer between his comfortable life and two street children. It was between the man he was and the man he wanted to be. "Carlos!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the silent house. "Get the car ready, now!" While Carlos brought the car around, Arthur grabbed his cell phone. He ignored the dozens of missed calls and dialed his lawyer. "Hire whoever you need, private investigators, the best. I want you to find two children downtown, and I want you to start the adoption process immediately." There was a shocked pause on the other end of the line. "Adoption, Arthur. You can't adopt children without documents, without a history." "I didn't ask if I could," Arthur interrupted, his voice hard as steel. "I said start. Use my entire fortune if necessary. Move heaven and earth. I don't care about the cost or the consequences. Just do it." He hung up and got into the car. "Where to, sir?" Carlos asked. "The Grand Majestic Theatre, downtown," Arthur said. Lily's information now his only clue, his only hope. The city streets were deserted under the ghostly light of the streetlights. As the car cut through the darkness, Arthur felt the weight of his old life dissolving. His family's approval, his social reputation, the businesses that seemed so vital. Everything faded before the terrifying image of Lily and Leo alone on those dangerous streets. He was giving it all up. Maybe he would lose his inheritance, his position in the company, perhaps even Isabel. But strangely, He didn't feel loss. He felt liberated. The search was the only thing that mattered. He would be the guardian angel they lacked, the protector their parents could no longer be. He would find them. He had to find them. The Grand Majestic appeared before them, a skeleton of its former glory, the windows dark like empty eyes. Arthur jumped out of the car before it even fully stopped, his heart racing uncontrollably, a mixture of fear and wild hope. He had to choose, and he had chosen. Now, he just needed to find them before it was too late. The darkness inside the Grand Majestic Theatre was almost palpable, thick with the smell of dust, mold, and forgotten memories. Arthur used his cell phone flashlight to cut through the shadows, the beam dancing over rows of torn velvet seats and the silent stage covered by a ghostly tarp. The silence was deep, broken only by the sound of his own cautious footsteps and the distant drip of water. "Lily! Leo!" he called, his voice sounding strangely small in the vast space. "It's me, Arthur. Please don't be scared. I won't let anyone take you." No response, only the echo of his own voice. Panic began to set in. What if they weren't there? What if Lily had misled him, giving him a false clue to buy time? He searched the main floor, the dusty boxes, the backstage corridors. Nothing. Despair began to erode his determination. He was about to leave, to mobilize a citywide search, when his beam of light caught something on the floor near a staircase leading beneath the stage. It was small and colorful. He approached and picked it up. It was the Captain Courage action figure. His heart leaped. They were here, or had been. The stairs creaked under his weight as he descended into the basement, a labyrinthine network of storage rooms and old dressing rooms. The air was colder and damper there. He followed a narrow corridor, and then he heard it, a tiny, almost inaudible sound, a sob. He turned off the flashlight and followed the sound in the darkness, his eyes slowly adjusting. In a small dressing room, whose mirror was broken into 1,000 pieces, he saw them. They were huddled in a corner, embracing under an old coat that served as a blanket. Leo was asleep, his face tranquil, but Lily was awake, her enormous, frightened eyes shining in the gloom. When she saw him, she shrunk back even further, pulling the coat over Leo's head, a small animal protecting its young. Arthur didn't approach. He stopped at the doorway and sat on the floor, crossing his legs, reducing his height, his threat. He waited in silence for a long moment, letting her get used to his presence. "I'm not mad, Lily," he said finally, his voice a whisper. "I was just really scared. Scared something might happen to you." She didn't respond, but he saw the tension in her shoulders ease slightly. "Your mother chose a good hideout," he continued. "It's safe, but it's not a home. You deserve a real home, with warm beds, food in the fridge, and no more fear." Tears began to stream silently down Lily's face. "They're going to separate us," she whispered, her voice broken. "I heard. They'll take Leo to one place and me to another." "No," Arthur said, with a conviction that came from the depths of his soul. "That won't happen. I made you a promise, remember? I said Leo's birthday would be the best one yet, and that nothing bad would happen while I was here. I don't break my promises." Gaining her trust was the first and most important victory. He sat there on the cold floor, talking softly to her for almost an hour, explaining his plan, not as an adult talking to a child, but as one partner talking to another. He talked about adoption, about how he wanted to be their father if they would accept him. He talked about how his family would likely disown him, taking most of his inheritance and business position, but that it didn't matter because he had already found his true fortune. Slowly, painfully, Lily began to believe him. The second victory came in the following weeks. It was a brutal, bureaucratic war. Arthur used his influence and what remained of his liquid assets to hire the best lawyers and investigators. They faced a cold and indifferent system. The Lancaster family, as predicted, reacted with fury. There were threats, emotional blackmail, and finally, The inevitable formal letter informing him that he had been removed from the company board and that his inheritance would be redirected to his siblings. He read the letter and tossed it in the trash without even flinching. During that time, Lily and Leo stayed with him, first in a discreet hotel, then back at the mansion, under a temporary custody order that cost a small fortune in legal fees. Arthur navigated the system, providing depositions, undergoing psychological evaluations, and opening his life to state scrutiny. With every form filled, every interview, he felt he was building, brick by brick, the legal foundation of the family he had already formed in his heart. The final victory arrived in a quiet, solemn courtroom almost 5 weeks after that day at the bakery. A weary-faced judge, after reading a mountain of documents and hearing the emotional testimony of the lawyers, struck the gavel. The adoption was granted. Their names would be Lily Lancaster and Leo Lancaster. Upon hearing the judge's words, Arthur looked at the 2 children sitting beside him. Leo was coloring in a book, oblivious to the magnitude of the moment. But Lily was looking at him, and in her eyes, for the first time, there was no fear, no distrust, just a deep, luminous peace. She reached out her small hand and held his. In that touch, the family became real. They left the courtroom hand in hand, 3 people united not by blood, but by choice, by promise, and by love born of adversity. 5 weeks after that fateful encounter, the Gilded Crumb Bakery was different. The air was still scented with sugar and vanilla, but now it was filled with a new sound, the genuine laughter of children. Once a month, Arthur Lancaster closed the shop for an hour and opened it to children from local shelters. Each one had the freedom to choose any cake they wanted without worrying about the price. A simple gesture that transformed the former stage of humiliation into a sanctuary of joy. Today was one of those days. Arthur observed the scene from a corner table, Leo in his lap, eagerly pointing to a chocolate cake with race cars on top. Leo, now officially Leo Lancaster, was a different child. The shadow of fear in his eyes had disappeared, replaced by bright confidence. He knew he was safe, that he was loved, and this certainty allowed him to be just what he was, a happy 5-year-old boy. Lily stood beside a smaller girl, helping her decide between a strawberry and a blueberry cupcake. At 7, she still carried a maturity beyond her years, but the crushing responsibility had been replaced by a protective calm. She no longer had to fight for survival. Now, she could afford to simply be a big sister. She discovered that accepting help wasn't a sign of weakness, but an act of strength, a way to better protect those she loved. The pink cake, once a symbol of unattainable desire and pain, now sat on a shelf of honor in their home, a perfect replica Arthur had commissioned. It was a constant reminder of how unexpected kindness can change a destiny. For Leo, who cried for a treat, the deepest lesson was that the family who chose him was worth more than any cake in the world. For Arthur, the transformation was the most profound. The man who lived to accumulate wealth, to manage a portfolio in dollars and euros, and track the rise and fall of stocks, discovered a different kind of net worth, one that couldn't be measured in bank statements. True wealth, he learned, lay in the courage to choose love over approval, human connection over social convention. His former partners barely spoke to him. His family treated him like a pariah, and his bank account was considerably smaller. But he had never felt so rich. The children he chose to raise were his most precious assets, his best investment. The baker, Jonathan, now treated them with fearful respect, serving the children with a forced but efficient smile. He never fully understood what happened that day, how a millionaire could turn his world upside down because of a cake and 2 children. For him, it was just a lesson about the unpredictable power of the wealthy. But for Arthur, Lily, and Leo, the bakery and its colorful display case were more than a shop. They were the genesis point of their family, the place where the deepest humiliation gave birth to the most authentic connection. It proved that sometimes the angels who change our lives don't appear with wings and harps, but disguised as desperate children, asking only for a piece of happiness on a special day. Later, at home, as he tucked Leo into bed, Arthur heard him whisper, drowsily, "Daddy, I love you." The word "daddy," still new and wonderful, filled Arthur's heart with such overwhelming emotion that he had to sit down for a moment. Lily appeared at the door, holding her book about the stars. She sat beside him. "He really loves you," she said, with her quiet wisdom. "We both do." Arthur wrapped an arm around her shoulders, and the two of them watched Leo sleep. 3 broken souls, each in their own way, who had met by chance and rebuilt themselves together. They were a family, forged not by destiny, but by choice. And in that silent house, filled with a love that had been hard-won, they finally found their home. The bakery window once represented a world they didn't belong to. Now, they knew that true home wasn't a place you buy, but one you build with courage, kindness, and the audacity to love without asking permission.